short joke already. Can everybody hear me now? I can't hear. Closer? Is that good?
Closer.
Yep.
Closer.
A little more closer and I'll start eating. We're good? All right. Good morning. I'm Jules Cutler. I'm the chair of the Libertarian Party of Iowa. And we are here today because one of the most remarkable men I know decided to make history. And after you hear him speak, you will know that having a first elected U.S. Senator running as a Libertarian is not just a dream, it is a reality. Dr. Thomas Laehn is the most humble man I know, doesn't refer to himself as doctor very often. He was born and raised in small town Iowa. He ventured out for some of his education to other states, some of it was in University of Iowa, and then he returned back to his roots to small town Iowa. Today he is serving as a duly elected Libertarian County Attorney of Greene County. This is his second term. He's well respected in the community. I am a criminal defense attorney, and I can tell you that criminal defense attorneys respect Thomas Laehn. He can reach across the aisle, even on this level. Thomas has a beautiful family. He has a gorgeous inside and out wife, Susan, and two beautiful kids. If you ever saw us in a parade, a beautiful little blonde girl who gives out candy, that's his daughter Sophia, and the little baby named Felix. Thomas is a Christian man, and I know these days it doesn't often mean a lot, but it does when it comes to Thomas. Thomas embraces the teachings of Christianity. He makes sure that people don't take other people's stuff and don't hurt others. Thomas is devoted to his family, he's devoted to serving people, and I am confident that he will represent people of the state of Iowa in the United States Senate, as well as he represents people of the Greene County. Please welcome Thomas Laehn.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. Really appreciate you all being here this morning. A beautiful day, a beautiful backdrop. I especially want to thank my wife, Susan, our children, Sophia, Felix, my mom and dad, Jerry and Margie Laehn, who came in from Grinnell, my brother, Tim, and his wife, Sarah, and their 4 kids. We fill up a couple tables with his children and mine, Penelope, Dahlia, Augie, and Flora. I really am grateful for their support in the days and weeks and months leading up to this event. I like to start with stories, as many of you know, and today will be no different. It'll be a story about our daughter, Sophia. Some of you have probably heard before. My wife and I, Susan and I, both belong to the local Jefferson Rotary Club. A couple Rotarians are here. And as you may know, Rotary begins every meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. And one Monday, the Rotary Club in Jefferson meets on Mondays. We brought our daughter, Sophia, with us to the meeting. She was in pre-kindergarten at the time at Greene County Elementary School. But I don't quite remember why, if they had an in-service or for some reason she didn't have school that day and we didn't have childcare. So we had to bring our daughter with us to the Rotary meeting. And at the beginning of the meeting, we say the pledge, and our daughter at the time was only 4 or 5 years old. And Susan and I were so proud because when we all stood up to say the pledge, Sophia stood up and put her hand on her heart and began reciting the pledge. And we didn't know that she knew the Pledge of Allegiance. We didn't know where she had learned it. We hadn't taught it to her yet. She said the pledge right along with everyone else until we got to the end. And when everyone else ended, after with liberty and justice for all, Sophia kept going. She said, "Have a great day, and remember, at Greene County Elementary, right attitude makes success." We quickly realized where she had learned the pledge was at her school. And I've thought about that. I think oftentimes for all of us, I know now she knows the pledge. I'm not sure how long it took her to realize that that ending wasn't actually part of the Pledge of Allegiance. But I think for all of us, sometimes when we say things over and over again by rote, we stop thinking about the words we're using. Whether it's a pledge or a prayer or terms of endearment to our spouse or a loved one, that sometimes we use words every day or regularly and we stop thinking about what they really mean. And I think that's perhaps true for our Pledge of Allegiance. When we pledge allegiance to the flag, we also pledge allegiance to the republic for which it stands. And I'm very concerned that the word republic has become nothing more than an empty sound. A word detached from the reality of the system of government under which we live. What is a republic? As many of you know, I used to teach ancient political philosophy, and I won't turn this into a philosophy lecture. But the ancients taught there were three types of government. Monarchies, in which all the power is concentrated in one person. Aristocracies, in which power is concentrated in a small group of people, defined by family name or by wealth. And finally, democracies, in which power is concentrated in the majority. The majority can do whatever it wants by majority vote. All three forms of government the ancients understood are defective, because in all three forms of government, power is concentrated in one person or group of people. And concentrated power is unchecked power, and unchecked power is arbitrary power. And there's no greater threat to our liberty than arbitrary power. And so the ancient Romans invented a new form of government called a republic, in which power is divided, fragmented, and counterbalanced. And when our founders met in Philadelphia nearly 250 years ago, in emulation of ancient Rome, they designed a republic where power would be divided first through federalism. Some power would be given to the national government, the remainder would be given to the states, and then within each level they further divided power across three branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. Power would be divided and counterpoised. A system of checks and balances would ensure that power remained divided and never became concentrated in one branch of government. The founders knew that the politicians in D.C. would be ambitious and power hungry. So rather than rely on human virtue, they made use of human vice. The genius of the system of separation of powers is that you have the president in one corner, Congress in a second corner, the judiciary in a third. And our founders assumed that the occupants of those offices would all be trying to expand their power. And the genius of the system is that each branch, while trying to expand its power, was checking the other two. When I used to teach constitutional law and American government, I would tell my students it was like a three-way tug of war, with Congress in one corner trying to pull power into its corner, the president in a second corner trying to pull power into his corner, the Supreme Court in a third corner trying to pull power into its corner. And the genius of the system is that in a three-way tug of war, everyone is outnumbered 2-1. And power would remain fragmented. The system would remain in equilibrium. However, as all of you know, today the system is broken. If some of you I know, friends, people I recognize who are members of the Democratic Party, and you today are very concerned about President Trump's efforts to concentrate power in the White House. But I also see many of you I know are Republicans who, when Joe Biden was president, was very concerned about Joe Biden's efforts to concentrate power in the White House. Donald Trump is not the problem. Joe Biden was not the problem. The problem is that Congress has abdicated its constitutional responsibilities and is no longer holding the president in check. In that analogy of the three-way tug of war, Congress has simply let go of the rope and allowed presidents, Republicans and Democrats alike to expand their power and to endanger our republic. Why? Why has Congress let go of the rope? Were our founding fathers mistaken about human nature? Are they angels and saints who are not trying to expand their power? On the contrary, they have learned that it is in their electoral self-interest to shift responsibility to the White House. Let the president make the laws. Let the president take our country to war without a declaration of war from Congress. Let the president bear the burden of governing while we can do the things that will help us get reelected, like meet with donors and lobbyists, give empty speeches on the floor of the Senate to an empty chamber, talking to the cameras rather than to our fellow senators. You know, when George W. Bush left office, he was deeply unpopular. The war in Iraq was going poorly, the country was in a recession, and the American people blamed George W. Bush, while the members of Congress got reelected at a 94 incumbency reelection rate. The members of Congress have realized that it is in their electoral self-interest to abdicate their constitutional responsibilities, to shift the legislative power to the presidency so they can focus on doing the things they believe will help them get reelected. The members of Congress are not saints or angels. They are ambitious, and something even worse than ambitious. They are willing to sacrifice our republic on the altar of their ambition. I want to give two examples. As you know, I'm county attorney, and one of the things I do as county attorney is I indict people. And there's a special form I'm supposed to use for an indictment, special language that I begin every indictment with, and it's something to this effect. Comes now Thomas R. Laehn, county attorney for Greene County, state of Iowa, and in the name and by the authority of the state of Iowa, I accuse so-and-so of such and such a crime. That's how I begin every indictment. Thought today would be a fitting occasion to bring an indictment against Congress. A two-count indictment. Count one. Comes now Thomas Laehn, a citizen of the state of Iowa and of the United States of America. And on behalf of the people of the state of Iowa, and in their name and by their authority, I accuse the 535 members of Congress of the following two offenses. Count one. Aiding and abetting the violation of the Takings Clause of the Fifth Amendment. I am sure many of you share my concern about the abuse of eminent domain in our state. I want to just explain briefly the context for this for those of you who might not be familiar with what's happening. Congress in 2022, including every member of our congressional delegation, supported the expansion of certain tax credits under 45Q and 45Z of the Internal Revenue Code. Under that expanded tax credit, any private company can receive $85 per metric ton of carbon dioxide the company captures and sequesters, prevents from being emitted into the atmosphere, and instead buries underground somewhere. And a company named Summit Carbon Solutions hatched a scheme that they would work with our state's ethanol plants to capture the carbon dioxide that would otherwise be released from the plants, liquefy it under immense pressure, pump it through pipes across the state, through South Dakota to North Dakota, where they would pump it underground. And the federal government would pay them $85 per metric ton of carbon dioxide that they sequestered. This is quite simply the biggest boondoggle in the history of our state. The environmentalists are opposed to this because it will do more harm to the environment building the pipeline than it will do good capturing the carbon dioxide. So it's a project that actually has the opposite effect of its intent. The only good this project does is that it enriches the donors to the Republican Party, to the Republican legislators who enacted this scheme in the first place. We just have to follow the money. But there's something even more nefarious going on. In order for this scheme to work, Summit Carbon Solutions had to be invested with the power of eminent domain. Power granted by the state to take land, take property rights from unwilling landowners to build a pipeline across their land against their will. This is in clear violation of the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution. The Fifth Amendment says your land cannot be taken unless it's for a public use, like a road or a new school, something the public can actually use. This project will only enrich Summit Carbon Solutions to the tune of an estimated $30 billion in federal taxpayer dollars. Its ultimate purpose, its real purpose, is to enrich the donors, to the legislators who pass the tax credits. I want to look at this in terms of first principles. Why did we found our country in the first place? Our Declaration is very clear, our Declaration of Independence. We have certain rights by nature, given by God, inherent natural rights. But just as you can't think of a triangle without thinking of three corners, without thinking of those rights that inhere in that person, that are inherent in that person, the freedom of speech, the freedom to worship God, the freedom to be free from cruel and unusual punishments, and the right to property, protected by the Takings Clause of the Fifth Amendment. Our Bill of Rights is an enumeration of those rights that we already possessed, and according to our Declaration, that we created governments to protect. We do not owe our rights to the government. On the contrary, the government owes its existence to us. And we created government to protect our pre-existing natural rights. But here, with this carbon dioxide pipe, it is funding the tax credits that are being used to build a pipeline over people's property against their will, violating their property rights. Congress has the power not only to eliminate sections 45Q and 45Z of the IRS tax code, which would immediately cause this whole boondoggle to collapse. They also have power under Section 5 of the 14th Amendment to enact legislation to protect the rights contained in the Bill of Rights. That's the whole purpose of Section 5 of the 14th Amendment. We, the people, gave Congress the power to enact legislation to protect the rights contained in the Bill of Rights from state infringement. And yet Congress does nothing. If I'm elected to the United States Senate, I will propose legislation not only to eliminate sections 45Q and 45Z of the tax code, but also defining what constitutes a public use within the meaning of the Fifth Amendment to prevent private companies from taking our land for their own enrichment. Count 2. Aiding and abetting the president's usurpation of the legislative power. The Constitution is clear. The legislative power belongs to Congress and to Congress alone. And yet Congress has passed 150 statutes granting the president emergency powers, free rein to do whatever he wants to address what he considers to be a national emergency. This is how President Trump built the wall on the southern border. Now, there may be people here who think the wall is a good idea. There may be people who thought the wall was a bad idea. Let's just set that aside. I think reasonable minds can disagree about how best to protect our national borders. We should all be in agreement that the president shouldn't be able to build walls, use funds, without a statute passed by Congress. Congress passed this law that if the president declares something a national emergency, he has the power to take money from the Defense Department, right? Money allocated by Congress for tanks and ammunition and food for our soldiers. The president declares an emergency, he can take money appropriated to the Department of Defense and use it to address the emergency. Unfettered discretion. This is how President Trump paid for the wall. He took money from the Defense Department, money appropriated by Congress, and used it to build the wall. Again, I'm not saying the wall is good or bad. I don't want to lose sight of the real issue, which is that Congress is abdicating its responsibility for our national security. But it gets worse. Since President Trump was inaugurated on January 20th, Congress has passed a total of 37 bills. That's all they've done. And some of those would be fluff, resolutions supporting something. In that same time period, President Trump has issued 209 executive orders. And it's just not the number, it's what he's purporting to do. And again, it just so happens that Donald Trump is president. I promise you, I would be making the same speech if Kamala Harris had been elected. Every president in recent memory has abused the executive power. But because President Trump is in office, let me focus on one recent executive order that should cause us all great alarm. On August 25th of this year, President Trump issued Executive Order 14341, which purports to make it a crime to burn the American flag. Now, again, there may be people here who believe it should be a crime to burn the American flag. And I'm sure there are people here who believe that should be protected as a form of free expression. I believe reasonable minds can disagree. Let's set aside that issue and look at what power the president is asserting that he has. The president said in his press conference that accompanied the signing of this executive order that if you violated the executive order, if you desecrated the American flag, you would go to prison for 1 year. Not 1 day more, not 1 day less, 1 year in prison. That's what he said. Do we really live in a country in which the president can establish a criminal law by executive order with the stroke of a pen and put you and me in prison for violating his executive order? Again, let's not focus on who presently occupies the White House. Imagine the person you do not want to be our next president. Whether it's Bernie Sanders or J.D. Vance, whoever it is, imagine the person you do not want in office having that power. Do we really live in a country where you and I can be imprisoned, deprived of our liberty for disobeying an executive order issued by the president? That's not the United States of America. That's not Republican government. That's Stalinist Russia. Congress needs to reassert itself and check the presidency. Eliminate all of these emergency powers that they've granted to the president. Prevent our troops from being introduced into conflict without a declaration of war from Congress. When's the last time Congress declared war? World War II. Presidents have unilaterally taken our soldiers into conflict ever since Truman in Korea, at the expense of more than 100,000 American lives. And Congress is content to say the blood is on the hands of the president. It's not. It's on the hands of the members of Congress. We are approaching the 250th anniversary of our nation's founding. Our Declaration of Independence did not just mark the birth of a new nation. It marked the rebirth of liberty in the Western world, the rebirth of Republican government. Ever since the fall of the Roman Republic and the rise of the Caesars, the world had lived under a succession of despots and dictators and tyrants and kings until 1776. Our revolution was not just the declaration of our independence from Great Britain. It was the declaration of mankind, of liberty and independence from all forms of political servitude. The fate of Rome is instructive. Rome was founded as a monarchy and was governed by a series of 7 kings, the 7th of whom was Tarquin the Proud, Tarquinius Superbus. His son, because he was the king's son, believed the law didn't apply to him, that he could do whatever he wanted. And he raped a woman named Lucretia, thinking he could do so with impunity. Lucretia, in shame, committed suicide. Her suicide spurred a man named Brutus to rise up, overthrow the monarchy, lead an uprising, and drive the Tarquins from Rome in 509 BC, establishing the Roman Republic. And that republic lasted 500 years, till the rise of Julius Caesar, his adopted son Caesar Augustus, and then a series of emperors where power was once again concentrated in one man. May future historians not look back on our generation as we look back on the Romans who lost their liberty to the Caesars. Let it not be said of our generation that we allowed the flame of liberty to be extinguished. Let it not be said that we humbly bowed our heads before the tyrant's yoke. Let it not be said that we passively accepted our fate. Let it not be said that we stood by silent and meek as that for which our forefathers shed their blood is taken from us. Let our generation instead be remembered as the generation that restored the promise of American life, that rekindled the flame of liberty, that declared we will not be made slaves again. That the 250th anniversary of our nation's birth once again mark a rebirth of liberty and self-government and republicanism in our world. And let that begin right now, in this place, at this time, with all of you. It is for this reason that I'm excited to declare my candidacy for the United States Senate for the state of Iowa, to join with all of you in taking back our country from the politicians and the political parties that have taken it from us. Indeed, it will not just be my name on the ballot next year. Our country will be on the ballot. Our liberty will be on the ballot. Our Constitution will be on the ballot. Our republic will be on the ballot. And on Election Day next year, the power in this country will be where it belongs. Not with the president in the Oval Office, not with the justices of the Supreme Court in their chambers, nor even with our representatives and senators in the halls of Congress. Our power will be with all of you in the voting booth. May God bless you. May God bless our undertaking. And may God bless our republic. Thank you.